In this lesson, I'm going to show you how to set ink limits and your channel splitting for when you're doing large format printing. Now we do this through the Media Profiles library, so to bring that up we need to bring up the RIP Manager, so we can click on this drop down, come down to RIP Manager here, bring that up. As you can see, that loads up the RIP Manager. We go to our Printer Settings tab here, click on that, and we can come down and you'll see this Media Profiles library button here. We click on that and that loads up our Media Profile library, as you can see. Now this particular module's got a good lesson on, and explains how all these options here apply to set these media profiles, and I suggest that you make sure you've watched that lesson to understand this properly before going on with this lesson. And in a previous lesson I also created a new media, which is this roll and photo based paper here, by clicking new media and explaining to you how to do that. So it's also a lesson I encourage you to watch. So now that we've got this profile that we've created here, we can come back into the main RIP Manager here and click this test ramp button here, and that will print out a proof and show us how this media is looking. And then we can come in here and we can start adjusting ink channels, or using this channel splitting option here to improve our media profile and get the sorts of results on our artwork, or our printed artwork, that we're looking for. So when we're talking about ink channels and the total ink limit, what we're talking about, the total ink limit, it sets the amount of ink that the media profile is permitted to print as a percentage of printing with 100% of the available ink. Okay, so what that really just means is that if our large format printer is putting down too much ink for our particular media that we have in our machine, we can actually bring down this level of ink here. Okay, and that's an important thing to be able to do. Sometimes we have a very high gloss media, and if we have too much ink being put down, what happens is we end up with ink running all over the place, or pooling, which doesn't get the results we're looking for, obviously. Now there's one thing to remember with these things, changing these things, is the lower our ink limit is set to, the less colourful our prints will be. So there's a fine balance between too much ink and pooling and too much ink bleeding, and not enough ink and having dull, washed out artwork. So you need to find the balance, and that's why you have the test ramp in the RIP Manager to be able to test that and actually print out proofs, and finally adjust this until you get it to the stage where you don't have pooling and bleeding, and you don't have washed out looking printouts. So there's a balance there. And to set it is simply just a matter of sliding this here, and you'll see the update button comes up here, and once we click update, that'll be saved. The other thing we can do is we can do fine control on the ink channels themselves. We can adjust all the ink channels as one set by clicking here and moving it around, and we can actually adjust these curves, and you need to print out a test ramp to see how this affects the proof, or we can do it by channel. So we can work on the cyan, the magenta channel, and we can do these things independently of each other, and a lot of this is trial by error. Now I've got to tell you, in most cases you don't need to touch any of this. You really don't need to come in here and change these things. It's only if you're just not getting the results you're looking for and you're not happy with your results. You can use these tools to manipulate and ever so slightly adjust your ink channels or your total ink limit to get the sorts of results you're looking for by adjusting them in here, clicking on update, click OK, come in here, print a test ramp, see what it looks like. If you're happy with it, that's fine. If you're not, come back in here, come back to ink channels, and start fiddling around with these settings again. The same with channel splitting. Now I'll explain what channel splitting is here. You've got a light ink channel and a dark ink channel. So for example, light cyan, light magenta. That's a classic example of this, which is what this particular profile allows for. Some more advanced profiles also have black as a channel and some other colors as well. But for this example, we're just interested in light cyan and light magenta. Now if I look at this curve here, this represents, as this radio button shows you here, this represents the light ink channel, and this curve here represents the dark ink channel. Now what we can see here is we're using all light magenta here as we're going along, but as we get to this part, the dark ink starts to kick in. So when we're trying to mix up this color here, we're using light magenta, and as we go across and we get a darker color magenta, or a darker variant of magenta, the dark ink starts to kick in, where we're using this much light ink and this much dark ink, here and this much light ink, and you can see they form an equilibrium just here. And this is where we're using half and half basically. Now the idea here is that You want light magenta, light cyan, and light black, etc., where you're trying to reproduce very fine color graduations. Skin tone's a good example of that. You'll find a picture of a beach scene where you've got, women in bikinis on the beach, and you've got all these skin tones going on all over the place. By being able to adjust these settings here, you can avoid clipping, like color clipping, and you can avoid blotching by adjusting this stuff in here. So it's a very specific application. As I say, you can create a test or print a test ramp and have a look, come back, adjust, trial by error, get it exactly what you want to do. Quite often you'd only adjust these things for very special case artwork. Normally you wouldn't come near any of these things because the default settings are actually pretty good. They work for, probably 90% of artwork, probably even more. So you really are only adjusting these things on a case-by-case basis, and when you've got specific artwork that you really want to get the exact right result you're looking for. And once you adjust these things and you're happy with the changes, so you can come in here and adjust these settings as so. So where the dark, you can come into the dark here, where the dark might come in, might kick in, and you might bring it back here. And you might find with a particular printout, these odd shapes actually get better results. That can quite possibly happen. So now once you're happy with whatever you've changed here, you can click update, and update here, click OK. As I say, print out your test ramp, check it out, see if it's okay, come back again, and you can see it's remembered what I've changed here. And this is how we adjust these fine graduations. So we select our profile. We need to check these two checkboxes to bring up the tabs. So when I check on those tabs come up. We can now adjust these things. We can update these measurements. You can actually type them in numerically if you're really across this stuff. For those of you watching this lesson, you know exactly what to do here. Same with the channel splitting. You can copy and paste it from Notepad. That's fine, no problems. And we can set these fine adjustments, update our settings, print out a test ramp, see if we're happy with the results. Once we're happy and we've updated the profile, it will remember those settings forever. And as I've explained in previous lessons, you might copy this profile, give it another, make it version 2 of this, and for a particular job that a repeat client comes to you with, that you've spent a lot of trouble getting, finally adjusting all these things to the sorts of stage you want to adjust them to, you can then just load in that profile, and this is the beauty of the profile library concept. You can just bring that profile back up, do the job for the client, and then go back to your default version of that profile, which has got the standard settings. So that's how you adjust the ink channels and the channel splitting, and how they generally work together. And that's the end of this lesson.